Okay. Thank you for that report. That's really encouraging. Isn't that exciting?
Did I tell you we gave away 160 Bibles?
Total?
Oh, yeah. That was because my family here who helped. These Bibles are like $13 a Bible. And so even with you guys, you were a part of it.
Yep. Praise God. Now, meanwhile, back at the ranch, we're in Esther. It's my favorite book. And we are in chapter number 8. You got it right. Chapter 8. We have gone through the process of Esther becoming queen. Mordecai. Is it working? Okay. Ha ha! We did it tonight. Mordecai was at the gate and he heard the threat against the king. He reported that. They got the guys. The king was saved. And life went on. And then Haman shows up. You know, anywhere that the devil can come in to try to destroy the kingdom of God, that's what he does. So Haman represents that. And then he was exposed through the relationship that was gleaned from Esther to the king. And then all the people in one day, everybody say one day, were saved. In one day. Just like when they came out of Egypt, it all happened in one day. Just like it happened at the cross, it all happened when he said, "It is finished." It came suddenly, and everything is new. Everything is new. Okay? The problem with everything becoming new is that it's not all done. You're free. All right, now you're out of Egypt, but you don't know how to be a people. You don't know how to be a nation. You don't really know the God you're serving. You have to learn a new way of life. That's a learned process. If they came out of, in this situation, they're going to be free. But there's issues that have to be overcome. When you got born again, everything was wonderful and everything was fixed, right? Huh? No, I found out that I'm a new person and God wants to fix the things around me and I've got to participate in that process. My life wasn't erased. I just have a new direction and I'm born again. And so that's what we're going to see here now in this passage here as we talk about Mordecai and Esther. On chapter 8, verse 1, on that day, Ahasuerus gave the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther, and Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had disclosed what he was to her. Now, at this point, I don't know that he'd ever met Mordecai. It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And so, he was known by what he had done. And Haman has the one that led him through the streets. Haman was the one that used to see him at the king's gate. And so he read about him in the Chronicles the night that he couldn't sleep. But it doesn't say he ever met Mordecai. And so, but now Esther said, let him know Mordecai was her cousin, the one who was responsible for her. And so he brought him in. Verse 2. This is extraordinary. Verse 2. A man he just met. And he takes the signet ring from which he had taken away from Haman and gave it to Mordecai. He went from the gate of the king to having the authority of the king. Wow! Talk about promotion. Where does promotion come from? It doesn't come from the north. It doesn't come from the south. It comes from the Lord. Haman didn't campaign for, that Mordecai didn't campaign for authority. He didn't campaign for anything. He just was faithful at what he was supposed to do, honoring his uncle, taking care of his cousin, being a godly man, not giving in to the politics at the gate, being different and standing out, not keeping quiet when there was a threat. And in time, he was raised up to run the country. Wow. All in a day. In a day. Whew. What happened to Joseph? In a day. Everything looked bad. Everything was bad from the outside, and in a day he goes from the prison to running the country. Don't think that God can't use you. Be faithful. Be ready. And so he gave it to Mordecai, and Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And so Mordecai's running not only the country, but he's got Haman's household. And Haman was a rich man. Esther spoke again to the king and fell at his feet, weeping, and implored him to avert the evil scheme of Haman the Agagite and his plot which he had devised against the Jews. So remember, there's a law in place that Haman had gotten put in place, that on the 13th day of the 12th month, wherever you found a Jew in the whole land, you could kill them. That law is still on the books. There's a change in administration, but the law is still there, and it's the law of the Medes and Persians. And what do you know about the laws of the Medes and Persians? It can't be changed. It can't be erased. It can't be revoked. You're not going to have, they didn't let the winds of political ideas change their laws back and forth. If whoever made them, they figured it was worth making. So they didn't have the vacillations like we do in America, where you have one party that passes some things and the other party comes in and tries to erase the effects of those things, and the winds of change are everywhere. That does not happen in the Medes and Persians. And so this law is in place. So she goes to the king again, and he extends his scepter to her, and she arose and stood before him. And she said, "If it pleases the king, and if I found favor before him." Notice how she approaches him humbly every time. She doesn't assume, okay, I'm in good graces now. She approaches him in protocol. She's not approaching him as a wife. She's approaching him as a subject, as somebody that's in his kingdom, making a petition. If I found favor before him, and the matter seems proper to the king, and if I'm pleasing in his sight, while she winks, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. So we need to reverse these things. For how can I endure to see the calamity which shall befall my people, and how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? All my people are going to die if we don't do something about this. So King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai, "Behold, I've given the house of Haman to Esther, and him they have hanged on the gallows because he had stretched out his hands against the Jews." All right, this is what's happened so far. Haman is gone. Esther has his house. Now you write to the Jews as you see fit in my name, and seal it with my signet ring, for a decree which is written in the name of the king, sealed with the king's signet ring, may not be revoked. In other words, you need to write another law. That's how you take care of a previous law. You write a new law, something that would overcome the other law. It's not going to be erased, but you can overcome it. How many of you have declarations in your history about you, things that have been said about you? Declarations in school, declarations in your family. How many's had any of those kind of things? Are they still in effect? Okay. What do you do about them? Do about them. What do you do about them? Let me use proper English. What? You have to make an overcoming declaration that overpowers the one you've already heard. You have to hear something different. Even if you say it. You have to hear something different. Because it's not erased. It has to be overcome. You all know what I'm talking about now? Okay, so that's the situation. They've got to overcome what has been declared with a declaration. They got to make another law. And so, verse 9, the king's scribes were called at that time, and they wrote out a new law that commanded that on the 23rd day of the third month. So this has been 2 months. This whole process that we've read about in the other chapters has been a 2-month process from the time Haman made this law, and now they've got to make this new law. Now, sending it to all the 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia, every province according to its script, in other words, its language, it's written in their language, as well as to the Jews according to their script. So the Jews had their language, that went everywhere. Everybody else's language, it went in every language so everybody can understand. And he wrote in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring and sent by couriers on horses riding on steeds sired by the king's royal stud. So apparently there was one really good horse that was a stud, and he produced all the other horses. In them the king granted the Jews who were in each and every city the right to assemble and defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate the entire army of any people or province which might attack them, including children and women, and to plunder their spoil. So this law said that the Jews were allowed to gather and destroy their enemies. Anywhere in any of the provinces, including whole armies. All right? On one day, in all the provinces. And that day was the 13th day of the 12th month. You recognize that date? It's the very same date that they were going to be destroyed. So now you've got a law that says that they have the right to overcome all their enemies on the very same day that their execution was going to take place. Does that kind of sound like Haman and Mordecai with the gallows? And they were going to be allowed to plunder the spoil. So on one day, all the provinces, the king of Xerxes, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, a copy of the edict to be issued as law in each and every province, and was published in all the peoples, so that the Jews would be ready for this day to avenge themselves on their enemies. Now everybody is hearing the Jews are going to get to eliminate all their enemies on the 13th day of the 12th month. All right, throughout the whole of the kingdom. The couriers, the hastened, impelled by the king's command, they went out riding on the royal steeds. And the decree was given out in Susa, the capital, and they went all throughout the kingdom. Then Mordecai went out from the presence of the king, wearing royal robes of blue and white with a large crown of gold, and a garment of fine linen and purple, and the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. When the righteous rule, the people rejoice. Yes. Okay. What's that? The when they kill everybody? The 13th of Adar. That day, they would have permission on that day. That day. It's going to be a one-day deal. They got 10 months. Third month. They got 9 months to get it figured out who their enemies are. They got a hit list. Okay? And everybody shouted and rejoiced because the righteous are ruling. Yes, ma'am.
It has been said that the way the number 13 got this reputation of being a bad day and the number 13 not being good is because of this. It goes back
Okay, I had never heard that. Okay. Friday the 13th, I have no idea. Okay. We're not putting anything into that, but anyway. For the Jews, there was light and gladness and joy and honor. Everybody say that with me. Light and gladness and joy and honor. What did they have before that? They had weeping, they had mourning, they had sadness and gloom. Because they didn't have a future, they didn't have a hope. No matter what they did, even if they were good for the next 9 months, they were going to die. So it changed everything. Changed everything. 17. And in each and every province, and in each and every city, wherever the king's commandment and his decree arrived, there was gladness and joy. For the Jews, a feast and a holiday. Now look at the effect, though. And many among the peoples of the land became Jews. It's a pretty safe place, isn't it? Just become a Jew, you'll be fine. Didn't cost the ladies as much as it did the men, but they'd be alive. Because how do you become a Jew? You got to be circumcised. You don't say, hey, I'll be a Jew today. No. It's going to cost you something. You're going to have to be identifiable. And the land of the Jews, many of the peoples of the land became Jews, for the dread of the Jews had fallen on them. There's a sense of revival when the righteous rule.
Yes.
Things shift
That's right.
in the atmosphere, in the kingdoms, in the principalities. The restraint against people wanting to be godly leaves. And so there's a revival type of thing. There's more Jews now than there was before. Chapter 9. And in the 12th month, this is now, they've gone to 9 months, on the 13th day, when the king's command and edict were about to be executed, on the day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain the mastery over them, it was turned to the contrary, so that the Jews themselves gained the mastery over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Xerxes to lay hands on those who sought them harm, and no one could stand before them, for the dread of them had fallen on all the peoples. The effect of emotions is big. When you are in fear and dread, you don't have emotion to go fight. You basically have flight, trying to save yourself. And so emotion is a big issue. In sports, they call it the shifting of momentum. Where one team can be beating the other up in the first part of the contest, and the next thing you know, the momentum shifts, and the other team comes, and then they get energized, and the other team is just trying to survive the onslaught. Well, that happens in the spiritual realm and the natural realm as well. That you can have some good things happen, and you got momentum, and then you have something else happen, and it takes all your momentum away. Y'all know what I'm talking about? I want you to know that Jesus never lost his momentum. And we don't have to either. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, because Christ can strengthen me in any situation, no matter what's going on. Oh, you don't understand. They beat us. They beat us and threw us in jail. And they put us in the stocks. We don't have a restroom. We don't have a bed. Let's sing. Let's worship. See, they didn't bow down to the circumstances and get emotionally drained. Paul and Silas, they're in the jail. They changed the jail into a revival. The jailer and his family are up in the middle of the night. The jailer's kids don't even know why, but they're getting baptized. Because transformation had taken place. Don't let your circumstances dictate who you are. Somebody's salvation is waiting for you to stand up in the middle of it. Okay, I'll quit preaching. That's your job. That's your job. But isn't that the truth? That's the truth. We can't live in despair. The Holy Ghost is never in despair. And He lives in you. Free indeed. But you don't understand how my day's been. Y'all know how my day's been, right? Well, there you go. You're not changing that. My circumstances aren't changing that. Can sad things happen? Yeah. Yeah, sad things can happen. They sure can. But I'm not putting up a mailbox that's sad. I'm not living there. Okay, so where were we? Verse 3, all of the government officials, the princes, the provinces, the satraps, the governors, those who were doing the king's business assisted the Jews. They even had the government helping them. Because the dread of Mordecai had fallen on them. Mordecai's running the country. Most of them have never seen Mordecai, but just his name now creates a response of obedience. Jesus I know, and Paul I know, and Job I know. Shouldn't our name be on that list? The dread, the fear, demonic fear of those who walk with Jesus, knowing their names. So indeed, Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordecai became greater and greater. Thus the Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. They'd had enough experiences. They knew who was the danger to them. And in Susa, the capital, Jews were killed. The Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. And Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Portha, Adaliah, Andatha, Parmashta, Arasai, Aradai, and Vaiztha. And you're glad I had to read that. I think I did pretty good, actually. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Jews' enemy, they did not lay their hands, they killed them. They did not put their hands on the plunder. On that day, the number of those who were killed in Susa, the capital, were reported to the king. So the king wants to know how big of a bloodletting was there. It's his kingdom, There people are dying out there. It's good for him to get a report. The king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman in Susa, the capital. What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, she doesn't have an answer to that question. He's just kind of posing the thought. I wonder what else has happened out there. Now, what is your petition? She didn't have to come to him this time. Now he's asking her. See, now the momentum's moving, and what would you like now? What do you need now? It shall even be granted you, and what's your further request? It'll be done. What else do we need to do to clean this up? And then, where to go, Bill? Yeah, we'll clean this up. Then said Esther, if it pleases the king, let tomorrow also be granted to the Jews who are in Susa to do according to the edict of today, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. We want to give me one more day to make sure that we've gotten everybody that we need to get. Maybe somebody was hiding, or I don't know what the reason, but we'll just make sure we've done it. And we want to put on display what happens to the enemies of God. Not the enemies of Mordecai. The enemies of God. And so the king commanded that it should be done so, and an edict was issued. And Haman's 10 sons were hanged, and the Jews who were in Susa assembled also on the 14th day of the month and killed 300 men in Susa. So they had 500, now they got 300 more. So they had some accomplices, or those who were closely related to the ones who were already gone. But they didn't lay their hands on the plunder. Say that with me. They didn't lay their hands on the plunder. That plunder didn't belong to them. If anybody, it belonged to God. It wasn't theirs to consume. They didn't lay their hands on the plunder. On that day, the number of those who were killed in Susa was reported to the king. And so the king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and 10 sons of Haman in the capital. What then have they done in the rest of the province? Oh, wait a minute. I went backwards. Now the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces assembled to defend their lives and rid themselves of enemies. And they killed 75,000 of those who hated them, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Now, that's across a kingdom that stretches from Ethiopia to India and up to Greece. So 75,000 in that large of a territory is not a lot. Small percentage. But it does represent, a good portion of people who had ill will toward the Jews. This was done on the 13th day of the month of Adar. On the 14th day, they rested and made it a day of feasting and rejoicing. Now, but for the Jews who were in Susa assembled on the 13th and 14th of the same month, they rested on the 15th day. So the rest of the land only did it one day, but in Susa, the capital, they did it 2 days and got another 300 added to the 5. Therefore, the Jews of the rural areas who live in the rural towns make the 14th day of the month Adar a holiday for rejoicing and feasting and sending portions of food to one another. It's a day of celebration like Christmas. I made cookies. You want some? Pumpkin pie. What's your holiday special? Pumpkin pie? Anybody make something special on holidays? What's that? Sweet potato pie. Anybody make fruitcake? People used to do that all the time. Yeah. What? Stuffing! Stuffing in a turkey. Yeah, special things. So this would be a time that they would send those kinds of things. I had one lady in the church I grew up in, she would always make me, not the rest of my family, just me, a block of fudge. She remembered me for years. Yeah. Some people are just a little more special than others. Actually, I think that there was a time that there was fudge available and I didn't get any and I cried. And so she took care of that for years. Everybody else got to cry. No, I shared it, but anyway. But that's the kind of, this was that kind of a holiday. You send and everybody celebrates. Then Mordecai recorded these events and he sent letters to all the Jews that were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, obliging them to celebrate the 14th day of the month Adar and the 15th day of the same month every year. It became a new feast in the kingdom of the Medes and Persians. All right? It wasn't on the Jewish calendar. It wasn't in the Bible, but it's one that they made out of their experience. The Passover was an experience, but it was also encoded into the law. And the Feast of Tabernacles and the Feast of Trumpets, a different feast. But this is one that was made out of this experience that did not happen in Israel. It happened in the whole land of the kingdom of the Medes and Persians. Because on those days the Jews rid themselves of their enemies. And it was a month which was turned for them from sorrow into gladness and from mourning into a holiday. That they should make them days of feasting and rejoicing and sending portions of food to one another and gifts to the poor. Kind of sounds like our Christmas, doesn't it? Or what has been a traditional Christmas in our society here in America. Thus the Jews undertook what they had started to do and what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the adversary of the Jews, had schemed against the Jews to destroy them, and he had cast pur, that is the lot. However they cast it, when we think of casting a lot, we would look like dice, throwing dice or something like that. I have no idea what they cast, but they cast the lot. How they did it, and that was called pur, to disturb them and to destroy them. But when it came to the king's attention, he commanded by letter that his wicked scheme, which he had devised against the Jews, should return on his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Therefore they called these days Purim, related to the lot, the casting of the lot. They're called Purim after the name of Pur, and because of the instruction in this letter, both what they had seen in this regard and what had happened to them. So that's a feast or a holiday that is held throughout the Israelis, the Jews, even to this day, Purim. And the Jews established and made a custom for themselves and for their descendants and for all those who allied themselves with them, so that they should not fail to celebrate these 2 days according to their regulation and according to their approved, appointed time annually. So it became a celebration annually. Do we have a celebration annually that's an American thing that didn't come from our Constitution or our Declaration? Thanksgiving is one that has become a national holiday that is not celebrated all over the world. It's an American thing. Others may be joining in somewhere along the world. I don't know, but that's one that was made for us, by us, for us, celebrating the survival of those who came to colonize and bring life to the future in this land. So these days, verse 28, were to be remembered and celebrated throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city. And these days of Purim were not to fail from among the Jews, or their memory fade from their descendants. How do you keep something from fading from memory? Doing it. Education. Making sure that you participate in it every year. It comes around once a year. What else did they celebrate once a year? Passover. Why did they celebrate Passover every year? What are they remembering? They became a nation on that day. We were slaves. And on that day, we became a nation. We were pushed out of Egypt by God to become who we are. That's why we're here. Then he brought us out and showed us who he was on the mountain and gave us the law and the commandments so we know how to relate to him. You talk about that at the Passover feast. Okay, of course, the last Passover that was kind of effective for the Jews was the Last Supper. Because I make a new covenant with you. And after that, it didn't matter if they did sacrifices at the temple. They no longer counted. The veil was rent. God had escaped the box. Yeah. I saw a little part of an interview where this was a guy. He had a foreign accent. He was an intellectual guy. He had a foreign accent, so I don't know where he was from. But he was talking about how he had looked at all the different religions, Buddha and Hindu, different ones, and of course Christianity was different. He said the difference about Christianity from all the rest, there's none other like it, where God comes to dwell in you. There's no other religion that does that. Because they're still searching for God. But he was, as he was reading in Ephesians, is where this is the only God that comes to dwell in a temple not made with hands. That's our God. I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. You want to know, God, where are you? Right here. I haven't gone away. From heaven above and right in me. He's not afar off. I grew up with, you had a radio, AM, FM, that's all we had back then. Didn't even have stereo yet. You just had the AM, FM. And you'd have your little radio, and you'd be, transistor radio. You couldn't hear, you turn it this way, turn the dials a little bit, try to tune it in. Well, if you can't hear from God, you're not tuned in. Because he's not gone anywhere. Just tune in again. Now, sometimes he wants you to search. He wants you to dig a little deeper. And hiding himself so you can find him again is part of the process of growing up. Not saying, you don't love me anymore. You never talk to me. That's not true. Not true. It's your chance to prove that you're going to stick it out till you can find him again. Maturity is displayed by your continued pursuit in the lack of having goosebumps. Excuse me. You know what happens when you get goosebumps? They go away. And if you're just looking for goosebumps, you'll think God is gone. So then Queen Esther, verse 29, daughter of Abihail with Mordecai the Jew, wrote the full authority to confirm this second letter about Purim. So they established it from a secular throne with the authority of the kingdom to establish something that is still remembered to this day. And he sent letters to all the Jews, to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Xerxes, namely words of peace and truth. Say that with me. Words of peace and truth. Well, what you said a while ago, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And I guarantee if you're set free of the truth, you've got peace. Do you have a hand back there, Larry? Okay.
So this is the first law I've ever seen in the history of the Bible that was written by a woman.
Well, I think Mordecai was primary in it, but she was involved in it. Yeah. 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 They did it together. She wasn't excluded, but Mordecai's the one with the ring. So he would be the one that would have the ultimate authority. But yeah, women are not excluded from the process. Where would we be without Esther? Where would we be without Deborah? Where would we be without Jael? Y'all know who Jael is? Stake right through his temple. Gave him milk instead of water. Yeah. Where would we be without Samson's mother? Where would we be without Samuel's mother? People that heard from God. Yeah. So, words of peace and truth to establish these days of Purim at their appointed times, just as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had established for them, and just as they had established for themselves and for their descendants, with instructions for their times of fasting and their lamentations. So they established it for themselves, for the purpose of remembering. We were as good as dead. And we need to remember, there was a lot cast against us. Don't you worry about somebody casting a lot against you. He's already thrown his lot in with you. And the command of Esther published these customs for Purim, and it was written in the book. In the book. It's my favorite book. Now, King Ahasuerus laid a tribute on the land and on the coastlands of the sea. Now, he was also known as Xerxes in the Greek language. What was he about to do in his kingdom? Anybody remember? He was going to attack Greece. So he lays a tribute. He's collecting money. It takes a lot of resources to take an army across the land. To fight, if you got to go 500 to 1,000 miles taking a whole army, you got to have some resources. So he's laid a tribute on the land and on the coastlands of the sea, all the way down to the Mediterranean, and all the accomplishments of his authority strength and full account of the greatness of Mordecai, to which the king advanced him? Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? Now, the Chronicles of Media and Persia are something that have not been found full account. There's just bits and pieces. And so you won't find this account in their Chronicles because they just weren't saved. They got lost in history. But we've got the story here. It didn't get lost here. And so Mordecai, the Jew, was second only to King Ahasuerus and great among the Jews, in favor with the multitude of his kinsmen, one who sought the good of his people, and one who spoke for the welfare of his whole nation. Oh, for politicians that would have that heart. They're not there for their own. They go into office a nobody and come out multimillionaires. How's that happen? The way that it was set up in our nation is when it started is John over here in Ellendale could run to be a representative, and he'd go to Dover, and in Dover, the men in Dover, the leaders in Dover would decide who they were going to send to Washington, D.C. out of their assembly. The senators weren't elected like they are today. They were selected out of the state courthouse and sent. And they only went for a few months of the year, and they worked. They had a job. Now they have political careers and live off of the taxes of the people their whole lives. And government is the biggest employer in the earth. And how do you maintain your job if you're in government? You want to make your job secure, you want to be reelected, you're going to find a position, right? So now what happens is they serve for a few years and then they get a job as a commentator and make more millions of dollars talking to everybody on the computer or on the TV, telling them how things run. We have adulterated our system. We've adulterated it. We've sold ourselves to whoever will pay. We've made ourselves whores in the political realm. What is that? I'll give myself to you if you pay me. I'll reproduce you if you pay me. I'll represent you if you pay me. That's whoredom. You know why God called the Israelites? He said, your whoredoms, your prostitutions. You know why he said that? Because whoever you hang out with is who you reproduce. So if I hang out with a foreign god and I start to worship a foreign god, I produce that kind of activity. Who you're intimate with is what you produce. Miss Nellie, good to have you back, you and Mr. Tom. She's got a hand up there, I'm telling you.
What was he? How was his face?
Who, the king?
Yeah.
He was not a godly king. He was of the Medes and Persians. He worshipped idols.
That shows what just say who you deal with is what you become. So,
well, Esther wasn't with him that long. She only saw him every now and then. Because whenever they said you need to go into this, he said, I haven't been asked to come see him for a month. She wasn't the only woman he had around. She just was the queen, the crown bearer. And so she had the influence of Mordecai. Now, she did have a son. Esther had a son with Xerxes. They had a son. I forget his name. So they were intimate. They did have a relationship. She was the queen. But she had Mordecai on a regular basis to resist becoming like the thinking of the Medes and Persians. Although she had lived in the lands of the Medes and Persians probably her whole life.
What I think is, King was more really following what Haman was doing. And
What do you mean command was doing? What I don't.
But he was represented him before Mordecai. Haman is.
Oh, Haman. Okay.
Haman. He was doing what the king said. So, to me, the king was really.
Okay, let me follow here. You're saying that Haman was doing what the king said?
Well, the king said to Haman.
Okay, I don't see it that way. I see that the king was running a country, but Haman had an offense against Mordecai, and so then because he got the king's ring, he decided that he would say to the king, there's a group of people here that really aren't a part of our country, and they're not profitable. We ought to get rid of them.
But my thought is that before Esther, the kingdom was not believers at all. They were not people of God.
Only the Jews.
Only the Jews.
Only the Jews. Yeah, there was no revival in the land. Right. So this opportunity that happened with Esther gave the whole land an opportunity to experience the power of God. And it said that many of them became Jews in the process. Because of Esther and Mordecai, because who God put in place that needed to be there for him to save the people. And the most famous statement in the whole book is, well, that's the conclusion. No. For such a time as this, you have been brought into the kingdom. Who knows that if for such a time as this? In other words, who knows this all happened to you just for this opportunity. If you have that mindset, nothing will ever bother you that comes your way. Oh, well, I've come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Let's see how this is going to work out. Mr. Tom.
Yeah, I thought about it a lot. In fact, I spoke on it a lot. God uses the most unlikely people to do His work. I mean, if you look at most of the heroes in the Bible, they were not squeaky clean.
No, they weren't. They squeaked a lot, but they weren't clean.
Paul wasn't either, and of course, before he became Paul later. But it seems like if you look at a lot of, even if you want to look at what is considered saints in the Catholic Church, you look at many of the saints. Several of them were playboys, and they were, they with God. And I had, and I don't, it's not political, but a lot of people say, how can a man like Donald Trump be chosen to do something? God can use anyone. I mean, that bullet could have went to the back of his head, and it didn't. And so what I say to anybody that says that, God can use anyone and redeem them.
We're going to be going into the book of Ezra next, and in the very beginning of that book, it talks about Cyrus. And Cyrus is a king who is from the Medes and Persians, and he's not a believer, but God calls him his servant. And God's going to use him to send the people back to build the temple again. So God can use whoever He wants to for His purposes. Don't discount yourself. He picked you whether you wanted to be picked or not. Yes, Sean. Isaiah 43:19 says,
Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall you not know it? I will even make a road in the wilderness and rivers in the desert.
river in a desert. That doesn't happen, does it? Yeah. What we call things, He doesn't call those things that way. A desert doesn't have rivers, does it? Yes, it does. You just don't see them yet. Rivers in the desert. Yes, sir. Don't ever say the desert's not a place of supply.
Who's your supplier?
He supplied the Israelites.
Through the wilderness. They ate every day, didn't they? They had water every day. Amen. All right. Well, that's the end of Esther. A great book. A great story. Just consider yourself equal to Esther. I live in a land that's not my home. This world's not my home. I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere, but I have to forget all that. It's one of those old songs. But we have the capacity to bring the kingdom, so let's bring it. Did you have a question? You're on.